Thank you so much for this opportunity and for being on the webinar as well. So a very interesting webinar, really interesting. So we've got a lot of people on here today as well. So we're really looking forward to taking back some insights, a lot of tips and a lot of nuggets as well. So we're really excited to share this.
That's great. Thank you, Artie. Thank you, Midas, for inviting me back to share some design information and some nuggets that might help you with your projects. So this morning I'm going to be talking about adding value to specifically HMOs. We're not focusing on any particular size, it's very generic, but I'm just going to share my screen with you and we're going to dive right into it. Can everyone see my very orange screen?
Yeah, can see that nicely. Thank you.
Okay. So this morning, I'm going to be talking about how to add value to your HMO. My name's Angelene. I am an architectural consultant and I am the director of Bearded Ladies. It's a design studio based in King's Cross. Just to go through what some of the services that Bearded Ladies offer. We're a full design studio. We offer a range of architectural services for both commercial and residential clients. We work with developers on achieving planning gain. We also work with domestic clients as well. At the moment, we have a 93% approval rating in terms of most of the boroughs in London. We've got great relationships with them. We offer desktop feasibilities before you've obviously bought a property. We look into what's feasible, what's not. Bespoke consultancy, we look at concept or space planning optimization. We want to make sure whatever you're purchasing, whatever you're doing is right for its intended use. We also walk you through your planning applications and building control. So anybody who would like to discuss a project, our email's just below. It's hello@beardedladies.com. You can also find us on Instagram. And yeah, feel free to get in contact. So my intro. There's many ways we can add value to an HMO. And the most important thing is to have the right strategy for yourself and for your business and for your budget. So today we'll be just discussing some of the ways we can add value in the short term, so some short-term implementations and some long-term implementations. Some examples of short-term implementations, if I can speak, are usually the most cost efficient. So you're talking about small, minor changes that might add a little bit of value on there. It includes maybe updating your interior slightly, doing a bit of a refurb, utilizing a dead space, and then you add, adding a feature. That might be by ways of adding a conservatory, creating an open plan kitchen conservatory, becoming a communal space. It might be adding an ensuite in one or two of the rooms, therefore obviously increasing the room rents in there. Those are some of the other features. Some of the features might also include utilizing garages and sheds to create spaces, particularly with the impact of COVID, having an office space for your tenants to use, or just a space to store bikes and other things. We're going to look at some long-term implementations as well, including extending and some loft conversions, doing rear extensions and double stories as well. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. The first thing, before we start looking at adding value, we need to work with what we have. We need to really understand the context of the building that we have, the oddities, the extent in which we can do something, and the impact on that in terms of planning constraints. Some of you may have HMOs that are in Article 4 areas. You might have other impacts on their conservation areas. Some might be even listed. And we really have to understand what we're working with in order to come up with the right strategy that will add value and not take it away. One thing that I always try to promote is best practice is to invest in good blueprints. Blueprints are so important to yourself, but also whoever you're working with in your design team. It keeps everything it keeps everything consistent. So a measured survey, having a measured survey is an investment. It does cost, it can cost up to £1,800, but having good plans for everyone to work off is really a cost efficient way in the long term. So I always promote having a good survey of what is existing, what is there now. That allows you to then plan what you could do in the future and what you can do in the interim as well. So a measured survey is a very good tool to invest in. So another thing that is also key before you even start adding value to your property is to assemble your support team. It's great to brief your architect or your contractors, have your team, your structural engineer, or any consultants that you need, as well as informing your tenants, ready and briefed, so that when we're ready to implement the strategy, you can just run ahead with it and everyone's on the same page. Again, you can use your measured survey as the basis to get everybody on board, so you're ready to go. So how can we add value? Well, one of the most obvious ways is obviously to extend a property. So you can obviously, depending on your budget, look at some short-term interventions, which might be adding a communal room by adding a conservatory. Looking at infills. Infills are great because you can add extra space at not too much cost. So that might be adding an ensuite on a bedroom. It could be adding a communal space or a dining area, just pushing up the value a little bit, and the experience for the tenants inside, at not so much impact on cost. Another thing you can look at in the short term is if you have garages that are integrated into the building, you can look at converting them into bedrooms, additional bedrooms, or communal spaces for the house as well. Bringing that into the scheme is a very cost efficient way, and that can all be done with PD as well. Another thing we can do is look at some of the long-term interventions, which is looking at rear extensions going out 3 meters, or using permitted development extending beyond the 3 meters up to 6 meters. Maybe that that kind of implementation may add on a communal room, an extra room with an ensuite. Again, you can look at maybe doing a loft conversion. These are all things that can be done under PD, under certain conditions. You can look at double story extension if you have the space to do that. Obviously, that's a big kind of long-term investment, but it definitely adds the space, and it's worth doing. To maximize your footprint is really what you want to achieve when you have a HMO. And here's a nice image just showing you just to extend as much as possible. I always advise clients to go as big as you can, and then we'll internally try to maximize the space. I always encourage you to engage with an architectural designer or a consultant so you can best optimize that space. Another thing you can do when you're looking at extending is looking at the type of accommodation you're offering, whether it be single rooms, double rooms, maybe you have space for a studio. If you can, have a mixture. Look at the types of tenants you have, and the kind of tenures that they have. Can you, by offering something different, engage with a different type of tenant that can you can gain more from? Is a studio relevant? Could do you have space to do a 1-bedroom in a cellar? These are all things that you can explore. You don't always need to just stick to single room lets. Maybe explore if other things can be implemented into your HMO as well. Second of all, one thing that has a big impact is considering interior design. It's simple, it's cost effective, it's an efficient way to kind of increase your revenue and the value of your HMO. It also increases the appeal. I think you set a standard for your property when it's designed well. The tenants feel that they're considered, and it can increase, it can increase the rent that you charge per room, which is great. So one tip I always say is create a design manual. If you're going to really engage with interior schemes, it's best if you have a kind of a book, a little Bible, that's all centered around your HMO, that tells you the types of finish that you want, the types of where you got your bed, where the flooring came from. And keeping that up to date not only makes it easier in terms of managing the costs of running the space and the level of degradation, and it allows you to just hand over that manual to a contractor and keep everything consistent and keep the standard high. That's what we do in industry. We create archetypes detailing our interior packages, making it easier in the long term to maintain that high standard, which is great. So in closing, to add value to your HMO, you want to understand your context, understand what the limitations are for your site, set yourself short and long goals for your HMO. Keep it moving, keep improving all the time, even if it's just a small little change leading up to a bigger change. Set that goal. Explore extending in every direction. Look at floor heights, look at the changing your types of accommodation. Explore planning permissions and use of permitted development rights, and look at upgrading your interiors. Create a schedule for your interiors and keep adding features, because adding features adds value. So good luck with your HMOs. If you need any tips, come and speak to us at Hello Bearded Ladies. Thank you.
Ooh, thank you for that. I like the way you done that presentation, actually, because it was really simple and very straightforward. It wasn't overwhelming at all with all different types of jargon or even anything complicated. It wasn't anything like, if you extend your property like this or like that, it's overwhelming, but you kept it really simple and straightforward. And what I really liked about it is because when you are managing a HMO, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of HMO owners on here, a lot of landlords in here, is when you've got short-term or even long-term goals about your HMO that you mentioned, it's all about time. So I'm sure a lot of the questions that we probably have or concerns that we might have today is, well, yes, it's great to have the short-term goals of upgrading little things or adding new features, but realistically, time is probably one of the drawbacks for a lot of landlords. How did they manage that? So they probably think, well, it might be easier for me to have a long-term goal because it's over and done with. So I think some of the landlords may agree or may not agree that time might be sort of a barrier, or do you get someone to manage it? Do you get a design team to actually step in then? So how does that work then? Is time really going to be much of an issue?
Time, sometimes you just need to do what you need to do. I think you have to dedicate, it's more about procedure and process, I would say, that would allow you to have the time to do certain things. If you have everything very, very organized and consistent in terms of information, in terms of, you keeping up to date with degradation. So you make sure that, your renovation plans are kind of scheduled, so the windows need changing here, the paint, the type of paint, because I think a lot of the time I find clients are often looking around and spend a lot of time trying to source the right product. So that's why I say it's very important, if you had a design manual just for your HMO, you said all the finishes, okay, they're going to come from IKEA, I know the codes, I know the paint color, I know the swatch color, I can go straight to Julep. Everything that takes it out, takes out, you're saving time because you've already got all the information there. All you need to do is engage a contractor to now come in and do it.
I like that. I like a design manual, because you're right, because by the time you actually find somewhere to source it or you go on the internet, it's a bit overwhelming. You think, oh, I'm not going to do it, and chances are you probably won't do it, and you go back to square one again. So if anything you're going to take from this presentation, I would say take the design manual, definitely. And there's something else that you mentioned as well, which I think is absolutely amazing, is maximize footprint. And I think you've put it as beautiful and as simple as that, which is maximize your footprint. And these are many elements that you can actually maximize your footprint. So I think that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, definitely use the PD. If you've got PD rights, exercise them. You can do it very, very easily. That's the easiest way without going through the planning permission route. Having said that, if you've got a bigger property and want to explore planning permission, again, we kind of explore it, and it can really reward. You can really push the envelope when you go into for planning. So don't be shy if you cannot achieve what you want to achieve and have to go into for planning. Don't shy away from it, because there have been instances where I've designed extensions that are 8 meters.
Wow.
We've just gone for planning permission and it's gone through, and they've got their additional 2 rooms, they've got their communal kitchen, and it's really helped. So one thing I would say is have a very convincing story when it comes to planning.
Mm.
Have a reason for doing it. So if you're aiming your HMO at students or elderly or single men or single people or couples, having a very convincing story that you can pad out your planning statement with, because that is really keen in getting it through, particularly if it's a controversial, if you've got something that's kind of different or a difficult site and you're trying to push the envelope a bit. By them understanding the context and your approach, it is most likely they will, once they're on the same page, you can get it through. Yeah.
So don't be shy about sharing that.
No, I mean, I had an example of a landlord who particularly aimed his HMO at elderly, and he was able to really get a lot more rooms in there because he kind of tailored it to a market that was needed in the area. So go for it.
Wow, brilliant, amazing. Thank you so much for that. If you those people who don't know about Article 4, how can they find out? Because I'm sure there's a couple of people here that are probably thinking, well, I'm not sure if my HMO is in Article 4 or not. How can they find out?
Yeah, there are a couple of online databases that have, Article 4s are being rolled out all the time with different boroughs. It's always difficult. Yeah, I mean, you usually get notification if your area is about to become, or part of it's becoming an Article 4. There are some online databases that you can find. I have a few links that they always change, so it is best to really just check with your local authority if they're going to implement an Article 4. But I can share with you the information I have so far with London boroughs. Outside of London, I don't really have that information, but just speak to your local authority, and don't shy away from Article 4. Article 4 just means your HMO needs planning permission. And again, if you have a convincing story, if it's something that is needed in the area, you are there is the possibility of you gaining permission. If there's a university nearby and it's an Article 4 and you tailor it and you have a very, very appropriate development, it's don't shy away, try and get it through.
Awesome, that's brilliant. So do your research as well. Awesome. I see.
Hello.
Sam, hello, it's Sam.
Hi, Ati, Angelene, Malin. Sorry, I'm a bit in the middle of something, but I'm going to ask a few, one quick question before I come back on room sizes. I understand quite a few councils are reviewing their room sizes. If you already have a HMO license and the requirements or room size requirement changes, how does that affect your license ongoing, and how would that affect you at the end of your current license if it comes to renewal? I'm done speaking. Thank you.
That is an interesting one. From the inspectors, I get mixed messages. A lot of them say if it's something existing, then there's not much you can do. It's usually going forward with new HMOs where the rules are really kind of implemented more. I guess it really does depend on how the difference between the new standard and the existing standard is, if it's acceptable. But generally they're a little bit more lenient if you're already up and running. It's if you're a newly licensed HMO, then inspectors are really kind of pushing meeting the minimum standards, because they want to raise the standard that's out there really. I would try to always make rooms, that meet the minimum standard, in general, even in an existing, if it means you have to adapt a room slightly, it would be better, because people going into that space, will be expecting, a certain standard, and it'll be good if you met that.
Any other ways of sort of extending or adding value?
I mean, without being too invasive, it is kind of doing your double story, your loft conversions. You can play with floor height and adjusting, floor heights in order to gain space in other areas. It is quite invasive, because obviously we have to remove floors, ceilings, and things. But in some cases, it might be worth it. Again, if you're looking at mixing tenures, so having single rooms and maybe some studios, I've seen examples where people often open up the ceiling on a first floor into the loft space. So they're not doing a loft conversion, but they add a mezzanine. Suddenly that space becomes a studio space. It becomes something much more flexible, and they add they put up the rent obviously according to that. And that's just a case of pulling down the ceiling, adding a mezzanine, and creating a really nice kind of upper floor space. And that's really good where you can't do a full loft conversion, or where you don't want to commit to doing a full dormer. Those are really good ideas that you can do, making really nice rooms.
Awesome, that's brilliant. That's really good to know.
Talking about, I mean, we've had quite a last 1 year that's been very interesting in our lives. Actually, I believe it's touched the whole world. The lockdown, the COVID, and everything. Will have changed the way we work. People have changed the way they do so many things, and it's hopefully, I don't know if things are going to come back to normal. In your design experience, designing HMOs, do you find that your current instructions are slightly different? Your landlords, your developers, are they requiring different things from what they used to ask for? Do you suddenly see everyone saying, make sure that the room has space for someone to work in? Are they doing like almost like a co-living kind of arrangement, or what are you seeing in changes? What kind of trends are you observing due to COVID?
Yeah, I am seeing some changes. So when it comes to like communal spaces, people are wanting more separated spaces. So a lot of changing bathrooms into cubicle type arrangements, where you've got a separate toilet and then you've got wash facilities that are separate, as opposed to having a whole bathroom. Most tenants are now, kind of requesting that there is a desk in their rooms. So we're making allocation, and making sure that space for a desk. A lot more people are actually wanting communal spaces. There was a period of time where people didn't really necessarily want a communal space, because it ends up as kind of a dead room. But now I think with people wanting that separation, people need an area to work, something that's a bit different from just working in their rooms. I've seen a lot of landlords do a lot of garden offices or summer houses. They've turned those into workspaces for tenants. They've also turned them into extra features like gyms. One tenant requested a bar once. That was a bit different, but it has changed. A lot of en-suites, I would say. Tenants now, almost all of them are requesting and would happily pay for an ensuite, even with additional costs, just to have that separation, so that there is less mixing. So I'd say, if you do have an existing HMO and you can fit an ensuite A typical ensuite is about between 1.8 and 2 meters long by at least 900 wide. If you can sacrifice a 2.2 square meter space within a room and not impact it on too much, I would definitely look at putting en suites in.
I think that's true, because a lot of the HMOs that we have had, especially quite recently, that Sam's mentioned for sale, one of the main questions we always get, en suites, how many? I think it's kind of expected a little bit now, because things have changed so much. So it's definitely a requirement as well. And I think you're right, people are willing to sort of sacrifice that other room for the ensuite as well. And it is certainly, I've seen as well, the demand is there and it has added value. So I've certainly seen this through the auctions that we do, the properties that we sell, that the requirements of HMOs have changed a lot, definitely.
Yeah, even if you can't, if you don't have the space to do en suites in all the rooms in your HMO, it's still nice to just have one or two that have that feature, that you can just up that price a little bit and add that extra unique selling point for that room. That will help.
And it might be a good idea not to have all en suites, because it gives your tenants a choice as well, or you have a choice of tenants that you have. So you know that you've got different income streams coming in, and it's kind of flexible as well. So you always know that you'll always have a tenant paying extra because of the ensuite. So you've got, for you to market and advertise it, it's a lot more easier as well.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, actually, I think you have a point there, especially if you have two people using a bathroom, say, it's okay, especially if the two become friends and they have you clean today and I clean tomorrow, because what tends to happen with shared bathroom, it's that responsibility, who cleans it, that creates a problem. But if you have just two people using it, it's like you clean every Monday and I do Tuesday, so it's easier to know who is responsible for what. Funny enough, as I was just came on, before I came on, I looked on my Facebook, and one of our HMO gurus, Wendy, that we used to have her on, she's actually having a live right now with some architects as well. But the heading of the of her live is why use an architect for your HMO conversion. So when I saw it, for me, I'm a lazy guy, and I don't try to invent things. I just copy good things. So I just thought to myself, wow, what a subject. I'm gonna ask an architect, why should someone use an architect when they want to do that HMO conversion? Why not just do it yourself? Why should someone use an architect? So I'm going to ask Angelene that tricky question. Why should someone that wants to do that HMO, as opposed to going down the pub, chatting with other HMO investors that have drunk, giving him ideas, he goes back, implements it on the next day. Why should they instruct an architect?
No, using an architect, obviously there's a certain level of quality involved when you use an architect, procedurally and spatially. I mean, every property is different, and what is good for one person and worked for them might not necessarily work for you. And I think when you're working with a professional, they really, they know what they're doing, or they should know what they're doing, and B, it allows you to really understand, by working with somebody that can explain how you can really maximize your personal project. You really understand it, and I think by working with them, you can kind of talk about what your goals are and achieve them, together. But also help, an architect helps you navigate through some of the statutory hurdles that you come up against. So, whether it be planning, getting your idea through and getting approval, there's a certain way that an architect talks to local authority and explains a concept, that and the way that they demonstrate that with the local authority is very unique and very professional. And sometimes it means that we can get something through that you might not, just by the way you phrase or you show and demonstrate that particular idea. So if you had there's something like a 9-bedroom HMO, you know, how do we convince the planners that that's not overcrowding? You know, how do we do that? So you need those professional skills, but also the way that you work. So when you've got you know, in my presentation, I kind of referred to having really good blueprints. By having, you know, a measured survey, you can really keep control of your project, and it's, you know, it's something that is really important to do. You can cost from it, other consultants can work from it. You know where your services are. It's all planned. So when you're giving instruction, even beyond using a professional, you still have all that information with you. That's consistent. Navigating building control, navigating contractors, giving instruction to contractors. That all stems from the information that an architect would give you, and it's something that you own. So going forward, even after you finish your HMO, you then still have your plans with you. You still have all that information. So when it comes to renovating, when it comes to upgrading or doing maintenance, you still have those blueprints with you. So I think, you know, the long after you finished with an architect, you're still kind of reaping the benefits of using them. Yeah.
Can you go into a little bit more, Angelene, about the relationship between yourselves and the you know, the planning process? You know, if you've got an HMO that's you know, is right for development, and they, you know, they want to go ahead, how will the process hinder, or how can it help them to meet their deadlines of starting work, or not preventing the work being invalidated by an inspector who comes and, you know, and rejects it because they've started before they've had the right approval? Yeah. So how can that
building control or planning? Are you
building control?
Building control. I mean, the thing is, when you're working with
I was watching
architects,
that when you saw.
Sorry,
I just muted Sam. I don't think he was muted. So sorry, carry on.
that threw me. So building control. I mean, there are certain things you can do under a building notice. You know, but you can't do structural work. But by working with consultants and things, you can start when someone knows the level of your work. There's certain allowances and certain conversations you can have with local authority because you've built up that relationship. They know your standards. So, you know, if I work in Brent or in Ealing, you know, they know the quality of the drawings that I put out. They know that, you know, so there's certain affordances that you know, you can gain. But generally, I would say in terms of building control, always go private. Just go private and get engaged with the consultants externally, and then use the external information to then approach a local authority. That be, you know, a planning consultant or a building inspector. Go private and then approach local.
But it's having that initial relationship with the inspectors that allows you to know what they are thinking, what's in their minds, and you can get it, and you can get the client on board sooner, rather than them having to go the conventional route through the 5-week, 6-week wait for approval, and you know, and the developments can't begin.
That's right.
I actually, from your presentation, I actually wrote down blueprints because I don't think anyone's ever mentioned that before. So I thought to myself, why is that so important to have? But you just shared that right now. So it'd be interesting to know on here, out of the attendees that we've got, how many people have the blueprints. HMOs have been very popular, especially during lockdown as well. So a lot of people are looking to invest in HMOs, and also you've got a lot of people that are trying to sort of sell the HMOs as well. So they've been very popular lots for us especially.
Yeah, it would be great to kind of hear from people who are also looking at commercial units to obviously change of use and convert into either flats or HMOs. Obviously, we know with the impact of COVID, death at the high street, some of these things. I know probably some of you are also looking at those kind of buildings as well. And obviously, we know that they come under PD as well. So it would be great to kind of hear if anyone's looking at projects like that, converting commercial into HMOs or flats. I'm sure that's definitely something more and more people are looking at.
They definitely are, because the class use has changed. So it's another great income stream, and it's something different, because depending on where you are now, you are very familiar with Harrow and Brent, HMOs are saturated. So a lot of people are sort of thinking about, well, where else can I get a HMO? Or if I do have a HMO in this area, how can I increase the rental and what can I do to sell it? So a lot of people are actually now looking at commercial, which has probably been the past couple of weeks one of my biggest requests when people have been contacting me about, have you got any commercial for sale? Because they know what potential they can actually do with this as well. But you shared your details. So if anybody wants to get in contact with yourself, how can they contact you?
Just email. Email hello@bearded-ladies.com.
Brilliant, awesome. Is there any questions that you would have expected from our attendees or from myself today that has not been covered, typically about how to add value, or something that a lot of your clients have asked you? Can I do this to add value? Will it increase?
I've always been asked, what are some of the mistakes? I mean, a lot of people ask, what are the mistakes that investors make when undertaking work to kind of convert a property into a HMO? And I always say the mistakes is it's usually two things. Not having a clear brief seems to be a big one. A lot of I get a lot of nervousness around fees, and a lot of the nervousness is because they're not quite sure what their strategy is. If you come to me and say, I want a 5-bed HMO, you know, we're very clear on what the brief is, but sometimes it's a case of, I might want to do flats, but I might want to do a HMO, but I don't know how many flats and I don't know how many. So when you're not clear is when you can incur a lot of costs, particularly when, you know, finance is involved or you've got to seek funding for things. So having a clear brief is really a way of avoiding some of the early mistakes that you fall into by just not having a clear brief. Another mistake is sometimes not onboarding contractors the right way. I say that because a lot of investors that I work with don't have you know, the right information. So a schedule of works. Now, if you've got a builder and you say, look, can you do me a loft conversion, but you don't give them a schedule of works, then how can you prove that their numbers not coming out of the air? You need something to gauge against. So I think it's always really, really important, and you know, to avoid overpaying, especially when you don't even realize you're overpaying. I had a client that had paid about £15,000 over for steelwork
Wow.
they didn't need.
Wow.
And that's because they didn't have a specification. They didn't have a specification from a structural engineer, and they didn't have a specification to give the builder. So the builder just said, well, I'm gonna quote 6 beams, and we only needed 4. So you know, having a clear schedule of works to compare against that tells you the square footage, the area that they're developing, what they're doing, you know, whether they're painting a doorknob or rewiring a whole house. You know, it's all there, it's all itemized. That's another thing that I see.
I think the other thing is you touched on this idea of being not sure of what is possible within any question of HMO improving the value. So what would you say in terms of hitting those options, brainstorming those options initially?
Feasibility. I mean,
yeah.
A feasibility is the best thing. A feasibility and a measured survey. And I say that because you don't want to pay twice for drawings. I think if you have a measured survey of what you're looking at, you then can conduct your feasibility in real time. You've got the drawings, everything, and then they're just upgraded into planning drawings. So that's the best way to kind of work your fees and figure out what you want to do, as well as achieve the right planning strategy. Do a feasibility. We can explore option 1, option 2, whether we do flats, but we've got the same information. And that then once we're happy, we then translate that into the planning drawings, and they go in, and you don't pay twice. So yeah, feasibility.
And strategy. Have a good strategy.
And a strategy.
Very good strategy.
Definitely.
That's the Bible for me.
That's
My
it.
apology there. Trying to multitask. Forget that men cannot do it, but yes.
No.
I was bidding with some client on auction, so we're done now. So I can have 100% on this. Okay, good. So I think I asked a question about the architect. Sorry to pull you back, but and I'm going to come back to that. Not for you on the spot, but is it every single architect that can do this, or are there some architects that are more knowledgeable on HMOs than others?
Yeah, I mean, architects, have different specialisms. Some are very good at doing mixed use and bigger projects. Others are really good at doing residential projects. And some are really tailored towards doing HMOs and working with developers. My background is I've always been in residential. I started on big scale, like Chelsea Barracks and the Batterseas projects, big mixed use developments, and really scaled down. And just because I like to focus on developers and really raising the standard and and the design and the quality at a smaller level. So I've really thrown myself into kind of learning more about planning and really focusing on that and becoming more of a specialist in type of planning issues, planning policy, building control on a smaller level. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just refer me to watch the recording if I ask a question that's been asked, because I wasn't around, or if you think it's still valid, you can still do. In the good old days, as we always like to say, everywhere in Harrow, up and down the country, Slough, everyone with 3-bed semi-detached. At the end, you have a shed at the back. Also, you build something at the back where you can rent it out as 2 or 3 rooms. It was good cash flow before they got quite tight with rooms in the shed now, as they call them. I understand some boroughs like Slough, they send police helicopters to fly in the night, heat-seeking ones, to find out if there's people breathing in the back of gardens. So, I mean, breathing as in out of oxygen. Yeah, so they have people searching to see who has people living at the back. So now it's quite dangerous to do that. But people do have those at the back of their houses. It's quite difficult to monetize them now as rental. How best can you use it to add value to your HMO if you have that space at the back? What can you do to add space, to add value to your tenants? Can you do like a games room or study room? Or
Yeah,
some...
I mean, you can put, add features such as a gym, office. You can still have it, you can still convert annexes into guest bedrooms, or you can even get special licenses from councils to run Airbnb. So even though they'll put conditions on there saying that you can only use it for a maximum amount of time or days, so you can't have long-term tenants, but I think short-term gain you can still do. The question is usually about size. We're not looking at shed sizes, so you need to make sure that whatever you're proposing at the bottom of the garden as an annex, it does meet space standards to begin with. So if you're looking at a studio space, it has to be 37 square meters, which is probably the size of a double garage. So if it's much smaller than that, it's going to be very difficult to argue that it's a habitable room, with toilet and things like that in it. Otherwise, it's just a lounge. It's an extension of the communal area, which you can do quite cheaply in terms of cost. So yeah, add.
You've been quite successful that way, haven't you? You've managed to push through at least two outbuildings applications.
We've done a lot of outbuildings, a lot of offices, garden offices, studios, self-contained. They can be put through. Again, it always goes back to your reasoning and why you're doing it, and if that reason is convincing enough with planning. If it's for your tenant's gain and you build up the case and you can prove that actually this is really needed, I can't see why you wouldn't you gain approval on it. Again, it's how you spin it. What they want to avoid is a permanent tenant living at the bottom of the garden. That's what they want to avoid.
Yeah. So now I think you're right. I'm just looking at this thinking, when you look at the co-living schemes, you tend to have a gym or you have some office space where you can maybe rent for, or either use it free or your laptop, or just because not many people want to work in, I think actually remember the property, one of the auction HMO that we had, and during lockdown when it went, all everyone was working from home, big screens, 3 screens, and not just
Yep.
imagine if you had 3 offices at the back garden. Some people might not mind paying almost as a service office, paying maybe weekly to use it if they need to work from home, or a daily charge for someone that wants to use it as a quiet spot to work from the back garden. But it's just really just looking at how best to explore the space that one has, and then moving on, talk about co-living.
Mhm.
In how does co-living really affect HMOs locally, or what are the key differences between co-living and HMOs? And when there's a co-living scheme, does it really affect the uptake of HMOs locally? And I'm saying that more just a loaded, say like in Edgeware, you have the bingo in as you, on the A5. I don't know if you remember that. There's a bingo when you're driving to Edgeware, big bingo building. It's meant to be the first bingo gambling room that was ever built in the UK. And
Right.
yeah, well, the first bingo hall in the UK. It's now got planning to build 127 co-living units.
Right.
So what do you think? How do you think that might affect the local HMO market? Or is this?
I don't think I don't see it affecting. I mean, I think the thing is co-living is a bit of a trend right now, and it's it's largely geared towards a certain type of living, and it's also quite high end. So I think it's quite niche. So I can't see it really. It's not got a broad appeal like a HMO. You can make high end, or you can appeal to those that are on a lower income. The range is more broad. And I think when it comes to co-living, you kind of think of, students, well-off students, or professionals for a period of time. I think it's shorter. So I think, I always advise, kind of looking into, kind of your HMOs has a bit more life, a bit more longevity into it, and it's not specifically targeted at a particular type of tenant. I think after a while, co-living, it appeals to a professional for a few years, and then they settle down, they move on. A HMO, you can be a single male and live there for 20 years.
Yeah, I think you're right about the co-living is sort of more student based. And especially during what we're going through at the moment, where people sort of want to get away from home and just want to co-live for a few years, and then it's quite temporary, and it is quite trending, but definitely certain areas as well. So it's not
Yes.
for everyone, for all the HMOs either. So it's a big trend at the moment, definitely.
Yeah.
We did actually have a very good HMO that we sold at auction just a week ago now, wasn't it, Sam?
Absolutely.
So it
It's
was
in Romford, an area that I think Angeline does a lot of work in that area. But you've done quite a lot of designs around the Gilder Park. So this is not far from Gilder Park, which is a higher end. It's a 6 bedroom HMO. Only one or two are en suites actually, but every single room is double. There's still a garage that's not been developed. They haven't gone into the loft, so it's a double fronted house. Big.
Mm.
They haven't extended that much, so there's still scope to really expand and almost double the footprint. Those properties, they are what I call quintessential auction lots, because they have what I call an elastic value. They have a different value for different people. It works well with 39,000 income. It works well as an income generating machine anytime for anyone, by any standards. Then the people that wanted it as a family home, in fact, one or two, because we had huge turnout for viewings, and I called every single person because the vendor was a bit urgently. It was quite difficult to convince him to put on the market with 380, reserve at 420. So he thought it might die down anyway after 421. So he was quite keen to sell it at 470, but I couldn't get anyone. 15 people actually made an offer of 450, and we couldn't get them higher. And I'm not gonna give you any suspense to say guess how much he went for. I'm just gonna tell you he went for 551,000, which is a massive uplift from the guide price of 380 to 551. So there you go. So those are some exciting HMO stories at auction. So we are looking for quite a lot more HMOs to sell at auction. So for anyone that's on the call, if you have a HMO that you're thinking of selling, I think Midas, we do have the golden touch. We can touch it, turn it to gold for you. So definitely.
Absolutely. The Midas touch it is, Sam. Definitely the Midas touch. But that property itself, so the link will be sent as all the details. So if anyone wants to explore a little bit more about that property that we sold only a week ago, then it's all going to be in the email as well. And as Sam mentioned, if you want to get your property valued and if you want to speak to us about how you can sell it, then definitely give us a call.
Yeah. Okay, so ladies, sorry for almost making your show a QVC channel. So
that's absolutely fine, Sam. Enjoy your open house. Thank you for that.
It might not be a bad idea to have a QVC channel that sells properties. HMOs. Okay. All right, ladies.
Thank you, Sam, for that. Thank you. Right, he's off on his viewing now, but thank you very much for that. We've not had a single question come through, so I think we've answered that really well, and the presentation was absolutely bang on as well. So thank you so much for sharing those tips. Really useful as well. There's a lot of things that we've covered. I just want to thank you so much for your time and everyone else who attended as well for their time as well. So if anyone has got any questions and they probably think of it a little bit later on, you can contact either myself or you can contact Angelene as well. And we will have an email sent out today as well. A little bit more details about the HMO that we sold last week. And if anyone wants to find out a little bit more about how to add value or just get in contact with yourself, then all the details will be on the email. But thank you so much for the presentation. Really appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And thanks for filling out the poll as well. That's great.
No worries. And we hope a lot of people have filled out that poll as well. There will be another one on the emails too. So it'd be great to have everyone's feedback on about having either a design masterclass or if they're looking for any additional help. It would be always excellent to have that as well.
Great. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.